young boy, I was brought up in an evangelical tradition. Free will was a no-brainer. Either I accepted Jesus Christ as my personal Lord and Savior, or I spent an eternity in hell. As I grew older, the thought of an all-knowing God not taking responsibility for creating us with the potential for sin no longer made sense. In fact, predestination made more sense than that. When I became a young man, I started to question everything. Nothing was sacred, not even my belief in God. I went from being a theist to practically an atheist. Of course, I didn't call it that, but for me, there was no difference between God and the universe. And since there was no difference between God and the universe, there was no essential difference between us and any other species. And since there was no difference between us and other species, we, like them, were led by instinct. For the longest time, it was no longer an issue with me. The question was settled up until recently. I started to ask myself, if I am such an ardent believer in determination, why do I live my life as though I'm not? Why, day in and day out, do I strive for my goals, my ambitions? Why do I try to force my will when everything is already determined? If I were driving a car and I lost control of the car, of course, I would strive to regain control of the car, but once I realized that it was futile, I would give up. But I don't give up. I fight, and I struggle, and I compete with others to get what I want. Even though, theoretically, determination makes a lot of sense, practically, that's not the way I live my life. I know someone who's constantly complaining about his life and the unfortunate consequences of his life. He does things that would embarrass the hell out of me. In a moment's notice, he will fly off the handle. I never understood that. How could he do that and not be embarrassed by his behavior. But then I thought about it. If he's constantly blaming other people for the unfortunate circumstances of his life, he's not taken responsibility for himself. And if he's not taking responsibility for himself, he is not free. There is something else that is in control of him. He's in a runaway vehicle, and he's striving fiercely to take back control. But he doesn't feel as though he can. And so he blames fate, God, the devil, other people, for the unfortunate circumstances of his life. The ancient Greek Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." If I do not take responsibility for myself, if I do not take responsibility for the consequences of my life, if I do not take ownership of the results of my actions, then I am not free. If I blame other people, if I blame God, if I blame the devil, if I blame the universe, then I am not free. And if I am not free, I am a victim of fate. I am in that runaway vehicle, and I frantically try to take back control, but I can't take back control because I refuse to take responsibility. I refuse to take ownership of who I am. And it's not so much taking ownership of who I am, but realizing that I have ownership of who I am. I am responsible for the consequences of my life, whether I like it or not, whether good or bad. If I do something, regardless of whether or not the consequences of my actions are intentional, they are still the consequences of my actions. And therefore, it's realizing that I have ownership of who I am. It's realizing that I am responsible for the things that I do and the consequences that follow. It's realizing those things that give me a sense of peace. I can say, well, the universe controls me. I can say that in theory, I believe in determination. But I have a sense of autonomy. I have a sense that I am an individual. And as long as I have that sense, I am responsible for who I am. My actions belong to me. If I said to you that the universe ate my lunch, I would do nothing but confuse you. However, if I said, I ate my lunch, it would clear things up. So I have a sense of autonomy. It's not the universe, but it's me. It's not the universe doing these things, but it's me doing these things. And because I have a sense of autonomy, for me to say that the consequences of my actions do not belong to me is a source of conflict. And I cannot have peace where there is conflict. And so, taking ownership of who I am, taking ownership of my actions and the consequences I follow, makes me into a free man and gives me a sense of peace. Because I realize that because I am responsible, I am also in control. Because I have ownership, I am in control of my life and no one else is. And I can say with William Ernest Henley, it matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.